very trendy, and it's been sold an image. And I'm not saying the image is real. Like, I live a great life. I can't deny it. I'm probably having more fun as a barrister than I ever did as a DJ. But I love the law. I love what I do. I'm engaged with what I do. I'm not just here just for the show of it.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast series. Whether you're at school, sixth form, university, thinking about a career in law, or exploring law careers, you're in the right place. We are the one-stop shop for student lawyers. If you'd like to join the Student Lawyer as a writer, please email hello@thestudentLawyer.com. This episode is sponsored by the University of Law. The University of Law offers a range of undergraduate and postgraduate courses and master's degrees alongside an award-winning pro bono clinic, so you can build up your legal experience while studying. And their Experienced Career Service will enable you to put your best foot forward when launching your legal career. The courses are employment focused and based on real legal practice, so you'll be better prepared for the workplace. Part-time and online study options are available so you can work and study at the same time. Click the link in the description box of the podcast to find out more about the courses on offer.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast. My name is Stephanie. I'm an LLB law student, future trainee solicitor, and the host of today's episode. Joining me today is Mark Robinson, criminal barrister at Great James Street Chambers. Mark has gained a reputation as being a maverick who fiercely defends clients at court. But before his career in law, Mark was a BBC Radio 1 Extra presenter and professional DJ for over 20 years, playing throughout the UK, USA, Canada, and Europe. He was also a music producer, having released an album with the Ministry of Sound, and has been responsible for several high-profile remixes of chart hits for artists such as David Guetta and Akon. During the episode, Mark and I discuss his unconventional route to the bar, the challenges that he has overcome, the benefits of being a mature student and career changer. And Mark also provides his opinion on the type of personality that is best suited for a career at the bar, and also explains the current strike action being taken by the criminal bar. Welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast, Mark. It's wonderful to have you on the show.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit hot, but I'm not complaining at all. I love the weather, and it's a lovely sunny evening. I get to chat and ask you some really interesting questions, I hope. So life is good. What about you?
I'm just stuck in a hotel in Oxford doing a trial. Well, that trial actually cracked, but then that's part one of the trial. There's another connected trial, so I'm going back in the morning. But nice air conditioning room. In fact, the air conditioning's working a bit too well at the moment. But it's all good.
Nice pool.
Yes, nice pool. I go to first thing in the morning, get the training in, and that's all good.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I think that it would probably be best to kick off the show by asking you to introduce yourself, and maybe you could tell us about your career history and what your practice involves at the criminal bar.
Right. So I'm Mark Robinson, as you know. I'm a criminal barrister at Great Jame Street Chambers. Predominantly, I do criminal defence, but emerging areas, as one might say, is inquests and inquiries, which I really want to develop. I've also done extradition, although I'm not really feeling that anymore. It's a bit boring. I predominantly defend. I used to do quite a bit of prosecution in the mags, and I used to prosecute for Transport for London licensing, and I'm on the government legal department panel, but generally it's mostly Crown Court, 95% Crown Court defence practice, and obviously if you end up in the Court of Appeal, you do, and that's what I do. I've been doing that now. I've been called to the bar at the end of 2020. Before that, I was a solicitor. freelance criminal defence solicitor, advocate for all of 5 months. And then before that, I was obviously a training contract. I did my LPC at the same time. And before that, I was in Birkbeck Uni, and I started Birkbeck 2015, graduated 2018 with a 2-1. I entered Birkbeck with no formal qualifications, no GCSE, no A-levels, and rather lucky. I think I took to law like a duck to water. But going on to the transition to the bar kind of thing, so I was freelance, and when I was a freelancer, I came through in COVID, which was freelance police station accredited police station representative, and I did all of that. Got admitted to the role of solicitors on the 1st of June 2020. And all this time I was working for different firms. Because of COVID, loads of staff in the solicitors firms were furloughed. So I was on a WhatsApp group that made loads of contacts, did loads of work, got sent to the mags, doing mags trials within the first 2 weeks of qualifying as a solicitor. Did a really good job, kept all the contacts, and then met my chambers, and that was slightly before that, but they said they would help me transition over to the bar. They wrote a letter to the BSB saying I'd got the prerequisite advocacy experience, and at that time I think I did about 80 court cases before I did my transfer application. I had my higher rights of audience as well, which is kind of essential if you want to get an exemption as a solicitor to go to be a barrister, and I did that, and BSB gave me a total exemption from pupillage and all forms of academic training. So just for record, because it's always asked, I didn't have to do the bar practice course or the bar professional training course or whatever it was called back then. I didn't do the bar transfer course, which is sometimes solicitors are asked to do that. I got exempted from all of that. No pupillage, no second six, no first six, no nothing. Literally, I had to get myself called to the bar, and that was on the 30th of November 2020. And then I was in chambers practicing from the 1st of December 2020, and I've not looked back. And so obviously qualifying COVID had its challenges because I was still doing a lot of stuff in the mags. But once COVID died down, I was able to do Crown Court trials quite a lot from, I think February was my first one of 2021. And then I've lost count of how many Crown Court trials I've done now. I actually couldn't tell you.
Okay. So I've got a lot of questions for you off the back of this. So I may as well at this point now rip up the rest of my interview questions, because I just feel like we're just going to roll from this. Why did you choose to, you mentioned that you got a training contract and more or less went down the solicitor route. What made you decide to move over to the bar?
Well, you wanted to be honest with that. So I always wanted to be a barrister in the first place. When I started uni, that was the intention to be a criminal barrister. And then I worked in an organisation called Spark to Life, and it was a youth justice organisation. And so I worked alongside probation, youth offending team, and sometimes the gangs unit, police of London Borough of Waltham Forest. Worked with a lot of young offenders, helped them out, did their parole reports for them. I sat on the MAPA panels, sat on intelligence panels, and I also helped remove gang nominals off the gangs matrix, but all criminal justice related. So I had an insight into what went on. Then whilst I was doing that, there was a young person I was working with who was at a prison. He asked me to go and get some documents from his solicitors. I went down there to do as he asked, and this would have been helpful with his trial. I identified a particular document that would have been very helpful to his trial. Me and the partner of the firm got talking. I said, look, I wouldn't mind you getting on board, and I can take you on as a police rep, or let me take you out to dinner. I said, look, I just want to go to the bar. I'm not really interested. He asked me a few times. In the end, I caved in, went to dinner, and ended up offering me a training contract. Now, I spoke to my friend who was at the bar, and I wasn't really sure, because I said, I still would like to do pupillage and do things that way. And he's like, look, training contract's there, it's on a plate. Do it, because you might not get an offer of pupillage. It takes time. And if you're not happy, just transfer. I did that. My inn, which is in a temple, was very supportive. I took the leap of faith and I did it. And I must say, I was never really happy doing a training contract. It never felt right. I'm not an office jockey. I don't like working in an office. I don't like being in the same place. I I always felt more comfortable when they'd send me out to do clerking. So I'd go out with cases that I put together and go out and shadow the barrister, sit behind them in Crown Court. And it was just great fun. I looked on in awe and I thought, this is where I need to be. This is what I need to be doing. And so as soon as I got out my training contract early because I was so unhappy, when I did my seats, funnily enough, I was put on to shadow a barrister that's got kind of quasi-criminal law firm called, or not criminal, this civil immigration family, and it was called Black Antelope Law. His name was Samal Paxikato, alongside Shaheen Mahmood. And they took me under their wing. Samal was, if I recall, he's a trainer at Gray's Inn, first-class advocate, and he really taught me a lot about advocacy. And he had me do these advocacy exercises. So he made me go along to County Court, Shoreditch County Court, and I did an application to do with housing for a possession order. And I did that. That went well. And then on my final day with him, he prepped me up to go to the family court where I did the whole hearing by myself. And I was in there the whole day doing it. But from that moment, I knew, look, this is it. I cannot stay any longer as a solicitor. I nearly walked out of my training contract there and then. I even applied for the bar course and got accepted. But then something told me to carry on with the LPC, finish the training contract early and just continue on your journey. And then it all worked out rather well, as I've said. And then I met my chambers, gate crashed a Christmas party. They really liked me. They helped me out a lot. And the freelance stuff, and it all just came together. And as I said, it was really smooth. Applying for a transfer was smooth. I had my higher rights. That was smooth. And yeah, it's never been a debate in my mind. My trajectory was always the bar. I just didn't really plan it the way it happened. And, I was also just doing the bar course and getting a pupillage, but, it is what it is. I have no regrets. There's a lot of skills I've learned as a solicitor, especially client care, legal aid, billing. It's all very good. But, advocacy is where it's at for me. A lot of people have a problem with the work. I like lastminute.com.
Yeah.
I like that feel of not always knowing where you're going to be. I like being on my feet and having to think on my feet quickly. I like legal problem solving. I like traveling. Everything about being a barrister kind of ticks the box for me. And it's even similar to my former career, as you may know. I was a professional DJ for many years. I was on BBC Radio on Extra. And the business model is kind of the same. And I say that for this because as a barrister, you're self-employed. And you have clerks, as you know, they take care of your diary management, your billing. As a DJ, you'll have an agent. Agent is the same as a clerk. They take care of your diary. They may or may not get you work, and they take care of your billing as well. They'll bring the money in for you. Also, I played all over the country as a DJ and, of course, around the world as well. And now I go all over the country. I'm in Oxford at the moment. I've done cases in Nottingham. I've got a case going on. I'm going there Friday for a trial. I've done a trial in Leeds, Stoke-on-Trent, Birmingham. And so I'm visiting, and Portsmouth as well. So I'm visiting in a lot of the towns and cities that I visited whilst I was a DJ. So the traveling is not new. Being in hotels for extended periods of time, nothing is new. The business model is exactly the same. And so for me, when other people are moaning about it, for me, it's like, oh, well, same old, here we go again.
Yeah.
Performing audience as well. The crowd, as it were, DJing, you perform into an audience. And as I love doing jury trials, you perform in front of a jury. And it's the same thing. And depending what club you play at, you might switch the music up a bit. Depending what jury in front of in what part of the country, you perform differently. And how you present yourself and how you present the case. So London cases, to me, are always different. London jury is always different to the rest of the country. And same was DJing in London was always a different experience to the rest of the country. So there are lots of similarities. And so that's why I'm kind of very comfortable as a criminal barrister, because not that, apart from knowing the law, and have an innate knowledge of the law, not that much has changed business-wise for me.
There are similarities, as you've just explained, between a career as a DJ and in the music industry and a career at the bar. So it does sound like to me that it's your personality that fits with both of these professions. Do you think, however, that you learnt skills in the music industry that you've been able to transfer to a career at the bar? And do you think that it is a good idea for people that aren't so perhaps natural in public speaking to pursue something, perhaps a hobby that will get them, in front of crowds?
A lot of people that seem to come to the bar are naturally talented advocates. Maybe I was accused of this in the past, but maybe I've been told that I like the sound of my own voice. So I've always been a chatterbox. Obviously, you couple that with actual knowledge, it is a good thing. I think what transferable skills, I remember I was a DJ, so I never actually spoke. I wasn't an MC. So that's where the speaking came into it, was presenting on BBC. And so I was trained to talk properly, trained to announce the Queen's death. I think I did one news show or something like that where I read the daily newspapers for a breakfast show. And all these things are transferable skills. But I was always kind of confident in public speaking. What came out of my mouth, whether it made sense, is another thing. Obviously, going from BBC, things just improved over time. And so I think I assumed that was a skill set. But I think my last job as well with the youth work and youth justice, but all of it combined kind of helped. But people who are scared of public speaking and don't like to talk, really, I'm not discouraging anyone from being a barrister, but really that's one of the main things, is you're there to do advocacy. There are some areas of the bar that do a lot less advocacy than others, but ultimately you're expected to go to court at some stage, regardless of what area you're in, and talk. And if you really don't like public speaking, the question really is, why would you want to be a barrister? You could be a solicitor and work, do litigation, work behind the scenes, have a highly lucrative career, and in the commercial sector, the corporate sector, and there's loads of areas of law that not everything requires advocacy talking. So, I mean, you'd be given some kind of basic training as an advocate. I mean, you might not be actually. The new SQE, I'm not sure if it demands it the same that LPC did. And so, but yeah, most people you find come to the bar because they have the flair for advocacy. They want to do that public speaking. It seems to me that if you're coming, you want to be a barrister and you don't like public speaking, then you really need to ask yourself, why do you want to be a barrister? And you really need to put that lifestyle part and park it to one side, because you can have that lifestyle as a very successful commercial solicitor, maybe even more so if you're comparing the commercial solicitor to maybe a criminal barrister. So I'm just, that's where I would go with it.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. I've done, when I first started out at university, I was working at active chambers. So I was exposed to a lot of barristers. And I did explore the bar route before the solicitor and went to a couple of mooting, not competitions, but just like weekends. And I did have a go, and I was slightly terrified at the beginning, but at the end, after completing a couple of days, I did feel a lot more confident. So I would just say it probably is worth just trying it if you are terrified. And if at the end of it, you still don't like it, then yeah, as you said, Mark, perhaps it's not for you. But sometimes I just feel like it's best to just face your fears head on and see what the actual reality is, if the bar is not for you, or if you've just got fears that you need to get over. So do check out your university's moot.
Yeah, moots, mock trials, mooting societies. So moots are good, and it's an excellent way to test your advocacy skills, debating societies as well, similar kind of skill set. So you can see if it's really for you. And moots are good, but even if you are good at moots, you still need to look at your reasons why you want to be a barrister and understand what the job actually entails. And essentially, we are advocates. And obviously, written advocacy is very important. And that's a lot of areas that you'll be asked to write opinions and drafting advices. And we do a bit of that in crime, but slightly less than our other areas of law where other barristers might practice. But the fact is that you're meant to have a very, very high standard of oral advocacy, and it needs to be very good. And so, again, if you think that, that's not my kind of thing, always look at the reasons you're doing something. A lot of people I see are caught up to wanting to be lawyers because they're not thinking about the actual law. They don't love the law. It's just the image, and I've got a law degree, or I want to be a solicitor or a barrister. And it's become that kind of career that people, not like the music industry or being a footballer, but it's just that it's become that kind of trendy, fashionable career. And, maybe 20 odd years ago, it wasn't so trendy and fashionable, and pupillage was easier to get because not everyone and their mum was trying to get a pupillage. And these things have become very trendy, and
people have been sold an image.
It's been sold an image, and I'm not saying the image is real. Like, I live a great life. I can't deny it. I'm probably having more fun as a barrister than I ever did as a DJ. So you figure that one out. But I'm saying I love the law. I love what I do. I'm engaged with what I do. I'm in, the law, or the whole thing. I'm not just here just for the show of it. It's actually have an interest in law. I have client care. I really enjoy the job. I enjoy the challenges of advocacy, legal research. I enjoy the whole thing across the board. And there's no element of it that I don't like. In fact, the more complex the case and the more I'm scared of it, the better for me, because the better the challenge, and I try to rise to the challenge. But again, if you can't deal with those kind of things and I just want to be a barrister, then you really need to have a look and assess your career choice. And when I was at Birkbeck, for example, I recall the first day I enrolled in the giant hall, which was in Quaker's House. There was about maybe 800 to 1,500 people in that hall. It was packed. It was like a club event. And by the time I graduated, there was about 300 people left.
Wow.
So everyone wants to do a law degree. Everyone's, thinks it's the done thing, but if you've not got the mettle to do it, and then even people that have done the law degree, it's been so tough on them that they can't progress to the other level to do, the LPC as it was then, or the bar course. And are you doing law for the right reasons? I don't see the point. I mean, I'm not an academic person, if I'm honest. Now I am, but I wasn't then. And I never saw the point of having a degree just for the sake of it. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not trying to dissuade anyone, but always look at your reasons, underlying reasons why you're doing something. And doing something because you think it's some bougie lifestyle is not really a good reason to do something, and you'll get found out.
Yeah.
And you won't be successful getting a pupillage, or you won't be successful getting a training contract, because the interviewers will see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything that you're saying. I think you've just given really fantastic advice. I do think that the career that you're pursuing has to really excite you, and you have to have that kind of like rush of feelings when you are, when you have been handed that case or that problem question to solve. I do think that people have to have, or should have, other interests as well, and life shouldn't all just be about work. And what you were saying as well about doing your degree, absolutely agree with you there as well. I mean, I came out of school after doing my GCSEs and went into a career, and then only just went to returned to education about 10 years after, and did my law degree. I will say, though, that the skills that I have learned from going to university have massively improved just my writing, my speaking, everything. So I do think that education is so important. It doesn't I don't think it necessarily think it matters what you do, but I do think that the skills that you learn from university are very beneficial, no matter what kind of like walk of life you go down. Yeah. You did mention Birkbeck before, and that you enrolled with only a few GCSEs. Am I right in saying that?
No GCSEs, no GCSEs.
Okay.
Yep.
So would you be able to explain to the listeners how you were able to enroll onto an LLB without the traditional entry requirements?
Oh, so I was a mature student. So it was all my life experience, you know, being at the BBC. I mean, look, I didn't do nothing in school, and I kind of got booted out. I was excluded. I didn't bother getting back. I think I sat one GCSE in maths and got an F for failure. But I did some kind of qualifications in college, like English for business languages, and did all right. I did a computing course. I did I'm qualified personal trainer, even though I went up to level 2. What else did I do? I've done counselling skills, because I was thinking about doing psychotherapy or psychology, getting a degree in that. And so all of these things kind of helped, but ultimately I was given some test at Birkbeck to do some analysis of a case called, I think it was the Maverick, and I did really well. And then the lecturer, the doctor at the time, she was impressed, and she offered me a place over the phone, said, yeah, you're very, very good. And, law was just where I was going. I mean, I'm sure you know about how I ended up even deciding on this pathway into law. And it's kind of an old story now, but I've told it 1,000 times.
Go on, you're going to have to tell us, refresh our memories.
I was falsely accused of assault on someone, and I ended up being charged with it, going all the way to Woolwich Crown Court. And the barrister who I'd instructed his case overrun, so I decided to represent myself. Got hungry the first time, and then I did it all again by myself, quit the second time. I say by myself, I had a solicitor's firm behind me, but I was essentially my own barrister in court. The first trial, I took the complainant apart with all their lies and did a bad character application on them. And funnily enough, the prosecutor took off his wig after I finished my cross-examination at the end of the day, and he went to put his wig on my head and said, you need to do this for a living.
Wow.
You know, you're that good. And I was like, whatever. And then the second trial, just before I was acquitted, a barrister who's now in my chambers, she came up to me and said, listen, I've been watching you in and out all week. You're that good. And she was a church minister. She goes, God has shown me that you need to do this. And it's not about what you may or may not have done, but this is something where this is the pathway you need to be on. And you just need the training. Funnily enough, after the acquittal, the officer who arrested me told me about being accredited police station rep. I never knew about that before. And this was the police officer that nicked me. Then the solicitors were behind me. They took me on and agreed to take me on as a trainee police station, probationary police station representative. And then, I ended up with a training contract with another firm, but it was all these little things that kept on happening to me. I had no intention of ever doing a degree in no subject. That wasn't on my radar. And then I was told by the solicitors firm that maybe I should do Silex legal, criminal litigation level 1. And obviously, a lot of people don't know, but chartered legal executives are another entry into the profession. Many solicitors firms are backed up with chartered legal executives. To me, there's not much difference with the roles of a solicitor and chartered legal executive, save for that solicitors have slightly more rights of audience. Obviously, barristers have all the rights of audience. Solicitors have some. They get more if they do the higher rights of audience. Silex have to do advocacy exam, and they get the same rights as a solicitor in the lower courts. Now, so I went to do that. The college I was going to enroll to didn't. I have dyspraxia, so it's developmental coordination disorder. They couldn't accommodate me, so they said, look, maybe try Birkbeck because you can get disabled student allowance. So I tried there, I enrolled, and as I said, I did that test and I was taken on. But everything was like random and I just went with it. Like I never ever wanted to be a lawyer. I never watched Suits. I never watched Silks. I never watched Crown Court. In 2014, when all this madness was happening with my court case, I didn't know the difference between a solicitor and a barrister. I didn't know the roles. I didn't know about law. I just thought it was the right thing to do to represent myself, and it paid off. And look where I am now. Look, 8 years later, I'm at the bar. So it's
a massive achievement.
It's just, it was never, I've never been one of them. I always wanted to be a lawyer. I actually didn't care. Even when I was doing the degree, I was just like, times like, all right, I'm doing this, but why am I actually here? Why am I doing this? And thought, look, I'll give it a go. And then I got my first year grades and it was really good. And then went on to do my second year grades and it was really good. And I ended up graduating with a high 2-1. Just missed out on a first by a 0.8%. Still fuming, but
I was going to say, not that you're counting.
Yeah. But other than that, it's a massive achievement. I accept that. I won an award at Birkbeck and they paid most of my fees for my LPC.
Excellent.
And I won 2 awards whilst I was there. One for a career shifter, and then the next was all these fees. And then recently, Birkbeck have honoured me by putting a life-size portrait of me in the main hall. So I have to go down there and see that.
I saw that. Next time I'm there, I'm going to go and I will
take a selfie.
I'll take a selfie next to it, I suppose. I mean, what else should I do? I mean,
I'd like to take a moment to speak about the University of Law, which is the university I decided to study my LPC at. The University of Law is the sponsor of this podcast and makes it possible for us to continue bringing these episodes to you. So we really appreciate you supporting us by supporting our sponsors. What really sets the University of Law apart from other universities is its belief in training students for the real world from the moment they accept a place. The University of Law's experienced career service and award-winning pro bono clinics offer students the chance to get real-life legal experience which can boost employability. They offer a range of undergraduate and postgraduate legal training and master's degrees designed by qualified experts to help students excel at any stage of their career. Their courses are employment-focused, honing key skills in a teaching environment based on real legal practice. Part-time and online study options are also available on many of their courses to help students work and study at the same time. If you'd like to find out more about the courses on offer, please click the link in the description box of the podcast.
It's been such an amazing journey. Again, Chambers have been absolutely great. Great Jame Street great in the name, great by name, great by nature. And they've really given me a good home and a good platform to really launch my career. And it's just been with rocket boosters. I mean, how quick I've been in the Crown Court as a junior so young, and the kind of cases that I'm taking on at the moment have been insane. I mean, I've been instructed for how many rapes I've done. I'm on my second firearms case, loads of drugs conspiracies, loads of Section 18s all the time, and everything else in between. And I nearly had a brief for my first murder. However, because it's no returns at the moment, I couldn't take the brief. Obviously, the bar is at action at the moment, so somewhat disappointing, but that will come. But it's really been an amazing journey, and it's been in such a short space of time as well. So
I was going to say it's been 2 years, like 2.5 years. You've done so much in such a short amount of time. I really wanted to talk to you about Birkbeck because a question that I get asked quite a lot is how did I go, as I've just asked you, from not many GCSEs to university while still working. And I mean, if I enrolled to a traditional university, then I may not have been able to work or had that support. And I just wanted to get your opinion on, or your experience on the difference between a I suppose, your education at secondary school and the support that you had at Birkbeck. Was there more support at Birkbeck than a traditional kind of educational institution?
Yeah, well, I got no support whatsoever in my secondary school. I went to school in the 80s, so they didn't even know what dyspraxia was.
Yeah.
By the time I went to Birkbeck, it was well known, neurodiverse spectrum. Dyslexia was big on the map, so the support was overwhelming, and I had an excellent study skills support tutor called Ash Phipps, who really taught me how to write essays and legal writing. Before that, I really didn't have a clue. I could just about probably write a sentence together. Now, it wasn't that bad. Honestly, it wasn't that good. She taught me so much. So big up Ash Phipps, and she was really instrumental. And I still deploy a lot of those skills now when I'm drafting. Your work really has to be on point when it comes to legal drafting. So she's helped a lot. I think support-wise, extra time in exams, loans on books. I managed to get a MacBook out of them, although I had to pay the difference. I got a Mac with all assistive technology, things like Dragon. I think after a while I stopped using those things, but it really helped me get through the study period. And so I was, I can't knock the support. And I had a special study room as well, where you get 2 hours, but what would happen, I'd go there at night, or I'd go there on Sunday and then double book, get 4 hours, and I was in there, lock myself away, listen to classical music and just bang out the essays. And it really paid off. So it was very good, a lot more support now. But I mean, I've worked in a lot of schools since. I do mentoring in schools. What I find is the support is there for those students now, the younger people, and obviously with the 80s, what we're talking 30 odd years ago. So it's a big change, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to make sure that point gets driven home, that people shouldn't feel afraid to pursue a career in law because they're worried about their education at university and if they're not going to have their support, because there are universities that are out there that will help you achieve your full potential. And I've got dyslexia, and I was offered all of that stuff that you had, Mark, the Dragon, the 2 hours support, the 2 hours quiet room in the library. It's a good job that you and I were not at Birkbeck at the same time, because I do that trick as well, So
What trick?
We would have been fighting for
what, the 2 hour room thing?
The 2 hour room.
Double booking the room and trying to get extra 2 hours.
Going into A and then going into B, so you get like 4 hours. Yeah,
it was great.
But don't worry, guys, I'm leaving in just a few months, so you won't have to battle me out of the room. So what do you think are the advantages of being a mature student and a career changer are when applying for, well, I'm going to say training contracts and maybe pupillage, but you did say that you didn't apply for pupillage. So any advice that you have there would be...
All right, so mature student is, you're able to concentrate more. Obviously, studying at my time of life, I was going for a specific reason. When you're young, a lot of people go to university because it's just a done thing. And it's a great thing. It's great to have that degree in your back pocket and, travel the world and, still live off the bank of mum and dad. But as a mature student, you really need, it's good to have a game plan, which I did have. I was 100% focused. I was determined, and I knew what I had to do. And kind of, not saying I became obsessed by it, but I was like, when I was in the study zone and exams period, I wouldn't go out, I wouldn't drink. I was 100% focused and disciplined. I think your focus is more when you're more mature student. You know what you want, especially if you're doing it to be a career shifter. You know that you need to get that particular qualification to shift your career. So that's going to be your motivation. In terms of training contracts and pupillages, I do think that in terms of pupillage, they like pupils with life experience. There's two lots of pupils, as I see. You've got the people who are young, who went bar school, stellar grades, Oxbridge, they get it quite early. Or you've got the people who are maybe not the best grades, but they were policemen, they were a nurse, a teacher, a professional in another area. And then they've decided to do the bar course, and then they'll get pupillage because it's that life experience they bring to the table. People like, and I get the cases, I suppose I do, and confidence in my clients because you can see, although I'm always told I don't look my age, the fact is that that I'm not a 21-year-old and wet behind the ears. So I install that confidence in people, and older people come into the bar, welcome. I mean, another guy who went to Birkbeck with Mr. Christian Fox, a good friend. He was a year above me in Birkbeck. He's a barrister as well in another chambers in Kent. He does housing and family and civil. Very successful. And again, he was a farmer, dairy farmer before, and a military captain before that. So life experience. I've met another DJ who's at the bar. There were all manner of people doing all manner of kind of things at the bar, and they've all come into it late. And so it's a good thing. The young lot, generally the traditional route, uni, but it's about the grades. And unfortunately, the Oxbridge crowd always seem to get pupillage straight off the bat, wherever they go. Especially if they come to the criminal bar, it's always a race to get those kind of people. And then the further you go up into it, the Oxbridge crowds get the pick of it. That's just how the bar is. I don't agree with it, but it is what it is. In terms of training contracts, now that is interesting because you get a lot of the younger people do seem to go for the training contracts in the commercial firms. I do sense that the commercial firms like younger people because they can abuse them more, keep them in the office longer. And I'll say that, I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Like the older, so the kind of the way them commercial firms seem to work, they like young people with no responsibilities. You can work, they can get their pound of flesh out of you, and you're there and you're all for the firm. Someone who maybe applied, it would be interesting to see someone who was a single mum with 2 children apply for a trading contract in the city firm and see if she got that. I'd be surprised. It's not right, but you've got more chance of, if you've got the grades, coming to the bar than that kind of firm, because I just know how they work. Of course, when I was a solicitor, I did talks, I spoke about this a lot, and I still feel the same way as this. When you want your will looked after, or maybe you want to do some conveyancing, or maybe you want your passport signed, you're not going to a Magic Circle firm to do that. You're going on your high street firm. There are approximately maybe more than 150,000 solicitors on the roll. Most of them do not work in Magic Circle firms. They can be found on your local high street, your immigration, family, conveyancing, wills and probate, all these little areas of law. These firms are there in your community. They run in exactly the same way as a commercial firm, although maybe the remuneration may not be the same. Just like I walked in off the street randomly and I spoke to the partner of a firm and I ended up the training contract. It's not hard to walk in, have your CV, law student, ask some experience, ask for some unpaid work experience, or whatever relationship you form. You could apply for a paralegal position, get a training, that contract that way. And those firms are always available, and they're always looking for people. And people overlook the high street firms, but they're everywhere. Barristers, there's not. How many barristers is there? Apparently, there's meant to be 5,000 practicing barristers, maybe less. Compare that to, 150,000 solicitors. It's an awful lot of solicitors compared to the amount of practicing barristers. So do the maths. Think of how many there are and how many firms there might be in all the different areas of law and some niche things they're specializing in. So, people look outside the box, and I found that older people did look outside the box. When I was at London Met and I did my LPC there, most of us all of us had training contracts or on the verge of getting one, and no one was in a top commercial firm. Everyone was in, boutique firms on the high street, some central London, some not, but it was all boutique, small firms doing various law And so
it's definitely a consideration.
It's slightly easier, but people just need to think outside the box. Unfortunately, what I found with a lot of law students, everything's silver circle, magic circle, or becoming a barrister, and nothing else is regarded. And there's so much more to law than this. And so I encourage people to look beyond what's being advertised, and it's out there if you really want it, especially training contracts.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. So we touched on earlier about how to get experience in becoming confident and excel when doing things like advocacy. But how do you think aspiring barristers can become confident and excel in advocacy, apart from doing things like mooting? Is there any other tips or tricks that you have?
Confidence in advocacy. I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. I didn't know jack until I was on my feet. I didn't realize until the first day I went to court, when I didn't even know how to fill out we call it a PET form. It's preparation for an effective trial form, which is what you do when you have a trial in the magistrate's court. I had to ask my friend how to do that, and she was a solicitor. To me, all the stuff you learn in law school, no matter how much mooting you do, you will never ever really understand it until you're on your feet. Whereas in your face, you've got magistrates or judges yelling at you, where you're under pressure, where you've got clients, where if you're doing crime, you're risking someone going to custody. It's all about doing it for real. And no matter what advice I give about shadowing someone and doing mini pupilages, which is good, mini pupilages are excellent, and you can observe what people do. But doing it yourself and doing the real deal is a million miles apart. It's the ultimate rush. But I've learned that until I was actually on my feet, I actually knew nothing. And so everything's been a process where the more I've gone to court, the more I've learned, the better you become. And there's still a lot to learn. I'm still very junior. But again, I think in terms of trying to get you there, you need to get there to understand it. And so the key really to get there is not necessarily how good an advocate you are in the beginning. You've just got to be able to be hot when you do your interview. If you're that confident and you're that good at interview, then you have a better chance of getting a pupillage. And so again, and probably the same applies for a training contract. A lot of people are brilliant advocates, but if you don't interview well, you're just not going to get a pupillage. And there's other people whose advocacy may leave a bit to be desired, but they interviewed really well. They had the skills to interview well. They did interview training. Instead of worrying about advocacy training, they did the interview training. Remember, when you go for an interview, you're not there to be an advocate. You're there to interview well. Yes, you might be asked to do an advocacy exercise. That might be asked a specific set of questions. It may be they'll see how you answered that question. It might be a written exercise, but the point is that it's about you interviewing, confidence, and letting your personality shine through. And so if I were talking to my younger self and I didn't have the training contract and did it the way I did, I'd say to myself, make sure I do as much interview technique classes as possible, because that's the key. As long as you interview well, you'll get through. If you don't, then it doesn't matter how great you are. And unless you're coming with some Oxbridge qualifications, which they might, let the interview slide, it's all about your interview technique.
So would you be able to tell us about one of your most memorable cases, perhaps like what the facts of the case were and the procedural history, and why it was memorable for you?
Yeah, right. There's a few, but I'll give you a lowdown on one of mine that I will never forget. So it was Isleworth Crown Court, a 74-year-old man tried with sexual assault, accused of pinching his colleague's bottom in the canteen area over lunchtime. This was a man who worked for the company for 46 years. He came here from Jamaica in the early 70s, and he worked with that company since 1974. Everyone loved him, never a disciplinary record, no convictions, never been arrested in his life, did everything by the book. Then this woman just accuses him of pinching her bottom. Now, got to court, and the prosecution had the managers as witnesses. The complainant gave an account, wasn't very good, but the prosecution came in with their other two witnesses, and the managers totally obliterated the complainant. Basically, there was another person that was backing the complainant. He'd been sacked, and then the complainant was just undermined completely by the prosecution's own witnesses. Every minute the trial had to be kept on being stopped because of the evidence that they were reducing about her, to the point they were saying, look, the central manager refused to be in a room with this woman. She made up false allegations before. None of this, of course, the judge allowed in. And it got to the point it got ridiculous. The defendant gave his evidence, and he was so lovely on the stand. He was just like, the jury really warmed to him. He said about how everyone liked him. And even, the managers that were prosecution witnesses supported him. And so in my speech, I said about how, look, you'd be not faulted into thinking that there was only two prosecution witnesses in this case, but there was actually four. And note that two of the prosecution witnesses on what they say about the complainant and what they say about the defendant. And I just went to town on the prosecution. And it was so bad that even the prosecutor herself kind of gave up on the case. The police officer said, look, we want nothing to do with it. They knew the score. Did my speech, lasted for a while. All the jury were nodding their head in agreement. And then they went out to deliberate. They came back in 14 minutes. Then the unanimous not guilty verdict.
Wow.
It took about 10 minutes just to walk to the jury room. So they would
Right.
14 minutes. And the judge, after, usual moaning, a bit critical about my advocacy, because I referred to the defendant as his first name. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to humanize him. I wanted to, this is a person. He's not just Mr. What's his name is, and so I conveyed that across. But the judge came in, they returned the not guilty verdict, and the judge said, release that man from the dock. And so he was released. All the family came running out of the public gallery, screaming, crying, and he's burst out a big cry. He'd been on bail for 2 years. Everyone was crying, so his family were crying. He was crying, saying, I told you I didn't do it. And then all the jurors started crying because they knew he didn't do it. It was mostly women. They were all crying. They were blowing kisses and waving. I was sat there and I had to fight back the tears myself. Me and the prosecutor just stood there. I was just like this. I was ready to start crying. It was so emotional. The jurors were like, even when they went back, the jury officer said everyone was in the room still. They were all crying. And it was the most emotionally charged trial I've ever done. I just will never forget that all the jurors were waving at the guy, blowing kisses, and it was something to behold that this wicked woman could just make up so much. And you knew it was lies. Even the police, everyone knew it was just a bag of bull. Like how he ever got charged, it was so horrible. And it was one of the most emotional cases. I'll never forget that, man. And I got a Glang reference for my work I did with that guy in the firm as well. But it was really, it was one of them ones. But I've done tons, good cases, and some are more emotional than others. But that's probably what sticks to mind, I think. I've done many trials that I win. Sometimes you win and it's like, whatever. But that was one of those ones where, I felt good.
Yeah. It sounds very heartwarming, and I'm not surprised it's one of your most memorable cases. I think that we've mentioned during the podcast that the criminal bar is on strike to a degree. And I was just wondering if you could please explain the reasons for our listeners why the strike action has taken place, and why do you think that they've chosen to do it now specifically?
Right, so the new head of the Criminal Bar Association, Joe Sudu, took over a couple of years ago. He called on government for action things got worse. Now, what happened over the backlog, things got even worse. A load of people left the criminal bar. I mean, I swear, when I was starting out my journey, there was recorded to be about, and I think so. My barrister count earlier was wrong, a correction. It's 15,000 practicing barristers. And I believe there used to be 5,000 criminal barristers. Now there's 2,300.
Okay.
And so there's not enough of us to do the work. We I've got, my diary is kind of full until August next year, 2023. I've got trials listed to January 2024.
Wow.
I've got one case which was committed in 2019. He's still not, and that was one of my first briefs I ever took, still not due for trial next year. And that was literally. And so I think that what's happened is that people have had enough, barristers have left. So it was that time to increase the pay. Now, look, there's been cuts through previous governments. There was cuts last year. There was cuts in 2013. It's not a political thing. Labour was just as bad. Criminal defence legal aid is not a vote winner.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's the poorest in our society that are often dealing with these criminal things, but not a vote winner, so they've cut it to the bone. And a lot of people were struggling making a living at the criminal bar, especially juniors. And, the magistrates' pay is atrocious. Like, for the basic appearance is £50. And even then, you've got to wait until the solicitor pays the money. They can take forever to pay. It's the same with magistrates' trial, half day £75, full day £150. Takes forever to get paid. It's not good. And I think that it's just pushed things to the brink. I mean, again, we do an awful lot of prep work. We don't get paid for that. You get one brief. Other areas like family and any private paid work is a huge difference. And so, I mean, the bigger cases you do, don't get me wrong, the better money you get. So the frauds, they pay well. They pay very, very well. But in terms of what we should get, it should honestly be more. So we had enough. It was the right time. The backlog needs to be cleared by someone. And so Joel just felt that it was the right time. And so we've asked for a 25% increase, because over real time, over the last 20 years, we've had a 28% pay cut. But what's on offer by the government is 15% pay increase from all new cases from, I think, September, October. But then the way it works is often with the backlog, there's no trials being, by the time you get to September, October, your trial's going to be next year, maybe 2024, which means you're not going to see that money after you build your case until 2023, 24. And a bit about how barristers work from legal aid perspective. You don't get paid until the conclusion of your case. Whereas private work may differ, but as crime, the legal aid agency pays us at the conclusion of the case, which is one of two things or three things. It's either the Crown offer no evidence, and then you can bill it. You enter a guilty plea and get sentenced, you can bill it, or you wait the conclusion of a trial, then you can bill it. And they're the three ways, but it's all about waiting. Obviously, and I do so many cases, I'm always billing something. That's not the issue, but if you don't have such a busy practice, it's a problem. And again, it's how much we do, goodwill. The first thing of action was no returns, where we don't cover other people's work. So my cases are my cases, and don't do anyone else's work. And I was covering an awful lot of people's cases before. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how I did it, because my caseload is, nothing's changed since no returns. I'm as busy as I ever was. I think, though, that from people just starting out, like I did, I relied on returns. Like the first 5 Crown Court trials I did were returns from other barristers. And you cut your teeth with other people's work that they can't do or they don't want to do. And so that kind of is preventing them from getting work. But then those people that are starting out are the ones that need the pay increase the most. And we want fresh talent coming in. And so people need to get proper remunerated. And it's not done. I mean, criminal pay is shocking compared to what commercial, lawyers would get, even family bars, much better off than us. Having said that, I think we still do better than solicitors. I mean, solicitors pay, duty solicitors is really quite bad, especially newly qualified. You'd be looking at, could be 25 grand, 30 grand. First few years, it's 34 grand. It's not good. And then you work your way up to your 40 grand, 45 grand with overtime, 50 grand. I mean, generally, a criminal barrister could do a lot better than that. But obviously, it depends how your practice is, what you're doing. Is it a mix of prosecution and defense? There's so many variables. But yeah, ultimately, we've formed a view that there needs to be an increase. Again, 15% in the current climate is not bad, but the cuts we've sustained over a longer period of time need to be rectified. And so I think the action is right and it's proportionate. And hopefully the government will take us very seriously. Like, the public don't seem to know a lot about us and what we do. What people have to understand is, just like I found out, is that you don't have to be some career criminal or anything like that. Just this twist of fate, and you end up needing a lawyer and end up in court. I wasn't looking for anything, and look what happened to me.
Yeah.
That guy that I represented, never been in trouble in his life, 74 years old. He ended up needing me. You could be driving your car tonight down the high street, and a 6-year-old runs out in front of the car, hot weather. You run that child over, witnesses say you were driving too fast. Next minute, you get done for dangerous driving. You end up in the Crown Court because the magistrates refuse jurisdiction.
Yeah.
You need a barrister, and you need a competent barrister to represent you. And, people think it can't be me, but it could easily be you. It's all too easy in life. So, again, this country prides itself on our court system and justice. And the central thing is the criminal courts, because good democracy is founded on the law courts, and often that law has got to be doing right from wrong. I think crime is probably the most important area and linchpin of law. Forget about all the human rights and employment and commercial and all that. Crime is the most central to a normal functioning democratic society. And you see other areas have based their legal system on this other common law systems. But think of it this way: when you watch TV and you watch legal dramas, silks, all of these things, where are they always based? It's not no civil litigation set. It's not no, commercial. It's not the Chancery Bar. It's not no immigration bar. It's not no, some corporate deal, sealing the deal. Where's all these legal dramas? Crime. Where do all the press love to report? This person's got sentenced, this murderer, this rapist, this terrorist. It's always crime. The media, they fetishize us. They love it. But yet we get knocked for asking for a proper bit of pay. There would be no half the TV shows. There would be no entertainment if it wasn't for us. It's the bar, it's crime. It's criminal lawyers. Or criminal solicitors. It's both of us. Do you know what I mean? You're not seeing some bougie case about someone trying to sort out his will. It's always crime. And that's what you see. When people think of barristers, you don't think of some guy sitting in his chambers drafting an opinion on quantum. You think about a barrister in a wig and gown in a Crown Court conducting a jury trial. And the only trials that do jury trials is crime. Maybe sometimes defamation, like libel and that, but I'm not sure there was that those footballers' wives trials recently at the High Court. I'm not sure. I was actually doing a trial there that day, but I'm not sure whether they had a jury. But most cases, it's always jury trials are a crime. People love that, but again, we get so poorly paid. Everyone's up in arms about victims and people should go to prison and this murder or this paedophile. But who's going to hear these cases? It's juries. And who's going to run these cases? It's barristers. And the thing about it is that law barristers most prosecute and defend. So you're cussing people off for defense, they're greedy. It's the same people that are doing the prosecution work. It's the same people that are ensuring that defendant goes to jail for life without parole for the most heinous of crime. So people knock us and they have no understanding of the profession. It's very, very frustrating, the public perception of us. And we don't make masses and masses of money. Yes, you can make a decent living doing it, but it's not what it should be compared to the work that we actually do and are part of a functioning democratic society. So therefore, it is right and it is proper that we strike. Now is the time, if not now, then never, and manage to bring the government to the table. There's talks going on tomorrow, on the 19th of July, and we'll see what happens. But, it couldn't carry on how it was.
Yeah. I think that you have given a lot of, I think you've given us a lot of information there to think about. And it really just kind of, I read what's going on in the newspapers, as I'm sure many people do. And you always hear people go, oh, yeah, it's a shame, they deserve to be paid more, and all that kind of stuff. And then you turn the page and it's on to something else. But I think that everything that you've just said really, really just drives it home that could be you. And I think that you've given us a lot to think about there. And and clearly the criminal bar and solicitors deserve to get paid a hell of a lot more, especially what's going on in the current climate, what with this crazy inflation. It's just I don't understand how they can be paid so little. It's a tough job, and I think that they need to be paid adequately in order to take care of their health and well-being, so that they can turn up to work and represent their clients to the best of their ability. So thank you for sharing all of that with us. So throughout the podcast, you have given us so much advice, studies, professional advice, and in the last question, I think a lot of life lessons as well. But do you have any final words of advice or wisdom to share with us before I let you go?
Words of wisdom? Well, not really. If you're on this journey, just don't give up. It can get very tough at times, especially with the studies, but just focus on the goal. The reason I got through my studies is because I focused on the end goal and it paid off. And there's, just don't limit yourself. Everyone wants to be a barrister. Everyone wants to be at the Magic Circle firm. There's many other ways to access the profession. Sometimes you can get a pupillage in a high street firm, government legal department, CPS hire more pupillages for crime than anywhere else, albeit it's prosecution work. They take on more women, they take on more non-white women. It's very diverse, has this government legal department. They're not on this Oxbridge thing at all. Again, you've got all these high street firms. There's so much opportunities out there, but people really need to think outside the box. And ultimately, as a lawyer, when you are qualified, you're paid to think outside the box. You are not, a lawyer is just a problem solver of law. And essentially that's what my job is. I go in and I solve my clients' problems in the best way I can and try to achieve the best possible result. And no matter what area of law you're doing, that is kind of the goal, whether it's family law, whether it's, civil litigation, or small claims, personal injury. It's about achieving the best possible result for your client. And that's what we're here to do. And so, again, you thinking outside the boxes, apply that to your whole journey in law, and also, study hard. Don't, when I was studying, I was in the thick of my studies. I studied like my life depended on it. And you must do the same. You need to have the grades if you really want to make a difference, and you are aiming for the bar, or you are aiming for a Magic Circle firm. Then, unless you're in Oxbridge or you've been to Harvard or Yale, only a first will do. Maybe King's or those elite the Russell groups, you might get away with a T1, but most of the time, honestly, only a first will do. So T1 is now the new first, and so the first is It's kind of really stands you out. So you really need to study, take it very seriously. So yeah, that's it for me.
That's excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing your advice. And I think that you've probably solved a lot of people's problems just by coming on the podcast today, and for, talking about your career history and the reasons why you decided to pursue a career at the bar and why you decided to study at Birkbeck. So thank you so much for, sharing all of your knowledge and for being a guest on the podcast. I've had a great time chatting with you, and I hope you'll come back again in the future, and we can talk more about all your memorable cases, the ones that are yet to come.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome. And thank you to everybody for tuning in to another episode of the Student Lawyer Podcast. And we'll see you back here again next time. To hear more of the Student Lawyers Podcast, hit the subscribe button and leave us a star rating and review. If you would like to join the Student Lawyer as a writer, please email hello@thestudentlawyer.com.